Hi, I'm Patty Dreier, Portage County Executive. Welcome to Portage County Matters, a show where you get to find out cool things about your community that maybe you didn't know about, and meet some pretty great people like my guest today, Matt Fleming, who is our Procurement Director here in Portage County. Before we get to you, Matt, and all the other details about the purchasing department, it will be really fun to share that with everybody. I just want to start with a couple of quick announcements, and then we'll get right to you. Well, first of all, this week, the week of July 23rd, not only is it my birthday, when I turned 52 years old this week, but also it was a great opportunity to be able to deliver the State of the County address, and that was delivered on July 17th. So I wanted to give you a couple of highlights of the speech, and also some information about how you can get a copy of it if you're interested. First of all, every year at the county board meeting, it's my duty, it's the county executive's duty, even from a statutory standpoint, to provide a State of the County address. If you'd like a narrative of the speech, it is verbatim at the county's website, the home page. That's www.co.portage.wi.us, or if the computer method isn't your method, it's okay to give our office a call at 715-346-1997 to be able to get a copy. We'll get one out to you by email if that works, or we'll mail one to you. Anyway, there were about 3 different parts to the speech, and the first was to acknowledge the really hard work that our staff at all levels are doing to serve the people of Portage County, but also elected officials who have been working really hard to acknowledge, and I wanted to acknowledge all that hard work. It is something at the front of the speech where I also highlighted that we shrunk the budget, the levy part of the budget, for the first time in more than 30 years. So that meant that we really had set the goal to decrease operational spending for Portage County government, and all of that was accomplished as we are dealing with rising costs of doing business, as well as trying to stretch every different penny that we can, and all of this while we kept the tax rate flat. So that was quite an accomplishment for Portage County. Another thing is that I highlighted a few of the areas where I thought that our year has been quite extraordinary, and I'm not going to go through those details right here. I hope that you do take a look at the speech, because we really had a lot of great accomplishments this year, and I really have to commend the group effort to make it happen. And then the final part of the State of the County address was related to the hot topics, or 7 specific areas that I believe we have to give some attention going forward. And of course there's attention given right now, but we have a lot more to do as we move ahead in the coming months. That is the healthcare center, information technology, joint dispatch, physical space planning, justice, economic development, and groundwater management. So anyway, those are the hot topics. I'm sure that you will be hearing more about all of them in future shows. And anyway, thanks for taking a look at that speech and providing me with any feedback that you can about how you believe we should be going forward to address the challenges and the opportunities before us. There's a couple other bits of news before we get to our guest today. One of them is a follow-up on last month's show. The County Board of Supervisors on July 17th voted in favor then of contracting out housekeeping services at the Portage County Healthcare Center. And we're also working now with dietary and nursing consultants to help us get some fresh eyes, I think I would say, fresh eyes to look at our operation, to look at the flow of our processes, to look at how to streamline things, and to look at what we are doing really, really well every day there at the center, and help us continue to refine that operation and help it be as successful as it can possibly be. So we're sharing those lessons learned through the consultants with our staff, and our staff is sharing ideas with management about how we can be as strong as we can be, and we're continuing to move forward there at the Portage County Healthcare Center. We hope that you'll give it some serious consideration when you're looking for a place for your loved one, and also a place perhaps for yourself if you have to have a hip replacement, for example, and you need to be temporarily in our rehabilitation wing before you can get home after the hospital visit. And the third and last piece I wanted to offer you in our news today is related to news this week. I shared this morning, actually, our economic development vision with the Economic Development Committee of the county, but also yesterday with the Portage County Business Council Board of Directors. And this is a vision for economic development that's the culmination of about 9 months of discussion with the City of Stevens Point and the Village of Plover leadership, as well as with the chair of the county board, Phil Eidsvog. I was setting about the process of exploring what are the ways that Portage County government can do its best to lift up economic development in Portage County, that is to either expand existing businesses or to recruit new businesses to our area that will help us move our tax base forward, to bring in jobs, to build jobs from within. Anyway, the long story short is that the municipal partners had come to the consensus that indeed Portage County does need a more coordinated and focused and proactive economic development effort, that we have a rather fragmented approach to things right now. Not that anybody did anything wrong, but it's just that it's sort of evolved over time and it needs a little more deliberate, focused approach. And that's exactly what we're intending to bring about by launching this discussion this week in these public forums. And our thought is that it would be of great value to Portage County to consider developing an economic development corporation, which is a vision for an independent public-private partnership that would have us really focus our energies and become the one-stop shop for economic development for Portage County, making it as easy as possible for businesses that are considering our area or businesses that want to expand to really get the help that they need to make it happen sooner than later. And the other thing about it is we see that there's an opportunity for a real performance-based system for economic development that would take the politics out of it, so that you're going to measure how many jobs you create or what kinds of businesses you're drawing in or how you build your tax base over time. And I think that it's time that we look at this kind of investment, a deliberate investment in economic development for Portage County, and that Portage County government is a leader in that effort, and that I certainly am and should be a leader in the economic development opportunity here for the county. And so anyway, we'll be sure to report to you what the next steps are in our conversation across the community. I will tell you that it's promising that both the Business Council and the Economic Development Committee are willing to take this discussion forward. We'll see where it goes. And I'm going to really look forward to that topic next month to share lots more with you. Now, on to my wonderful guest here today, Matt Fleming. Welcome, welcome.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here.
Our new Procurement Director. I still say new because it's a pretty big deal. You've really had to hit the ground running. You've been with us in Portage County government on our staff for a little more than a year. So again, a great welcome from Portage County. Yeah, you didn't come from Portage County. We hired you from outside in the world beyond our county borders. Why don't you tell us about where you came from and how Portage County is treating you and your family as new residents to our community?
Sure, originally from Rockford, Illinois. I know there's the whole Wisconsin-Illinois rivalry there, so don't hold that against me.
Yeah.
But spent about 9 years there at the Rockford Park District, which is in Illinois, the park districts are their own government agencies. So it wasn't part of another city, it's its own agency. And then moved up north to Madison and spent the last year at DOT in Madison there. And that was an interesting position there too, working on some of the larger scale contracts.
Department of Transportation.
Department of Transportation.
The infamous Wisconsin Department of Transportation, which has got to have helped you a lot in being a great procurement advocate for our highway department.
You bet, yeah. They call it the crown jewel of state government. That was always the phrase around it. Well, it's just what they call it, you know. But so yeah, when this opportunity came for Portage County, so we keep moving north. So I think we finally hit our northern barrier as far as Portage County goes. So getting much further north will be in Canada. So, but it's been a great community here. I mean, to come from Rockford, which, you know, Rockford's a good city, but it's, you know, the economic times there have really hit hard. A lot of the manufacturing is gone, you know. So the community, it's kind of, you know, had its better days there. To come to a community like this that's tighter knit, the people are generally more pleasant, and the schools are great up here. I've got a son that goes to Ben Franklin, and he's enjoying it there greatly. Yeah, and they've got an excellent.
To move up as a middle school
Absolutely.
student, right? That's
yeah,
not
he
an
came
easy
up in
thing
middle
for
school,
kids.
and he's one of those kids where I knew he'd be okay. You know, I mean, he can make friends easily, and still keeps his contacts, you know, down there with his friends in Rockford over the social media and all the stuff they do now. So yeah, he really enjoys it up here. You know.
Well, we're really happy to have you, and I always look to people like you who can be our fresh perspective in the community about how we do embrace new people coming in and how easy we make it for families to be assimilated into the system here, and how our community also, from the county government standpoint, assists staff members who are being employed in their new roles to really excel. And we set you up with mentors from the start. We had 2 mentors for you. And wow, I have to just say, you've done an amazing bit of progress, you've made amazing progress happen, I should say, over at the Purchasing Department of Portage County Government in your very short time with us. Let's talk a little about the mission and some of the changes, some of the things that you have been working so hard on in moving us forward.
Sure, the general mission of any government purchasing is to acquire and identify the needs properly of you know, whether service or product that we're going for. That's usually the first and most important part. You know, identifying that need properly. If that's not done right at the get-go, the chance of that procurement being successful really goes down. You know, so I mean, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, identifying, well, what's going to be the use and all that. So we kind of really enhanced on our ability to go out there and say, well, you know, let's talk about exactly what we need, what it's used for, when, what, where, and why this particular service or product is required. Then we took a look at also, you know, revamping our bidding procedures and our bid processes, and using the State Bureau Procurement systems, vendor net systems, to help us get the word out. You know, that hey, Portage County is in need of this product or service.
One of the things that I noticed, Matt, is that you have helped us cast a much wider net for procurement than had been cast in my first days here in this office. I had explained to you, and it's been no secret out in the community, I've said it in a number of places, when I first came into this office, I had some businesses from our community that had approached me about the fact that they didn't believe that our procurement system was as strong as it needed to be, that it was maybe a little bit favoring those that had already done business with the county and didn't give a fair opportunity for everyone to share in the new opportunity to become part of doing business with Portage County. And so anyway, I've got to say, it hasn't been very long that you've been here, and those calls don't come to my office anymore. And I think that people can see from the outside in, just like I can see from the inside out, that we have made drastic improvements and very much needed improvements. And again, I'm really grateful for your effort and your staff's effort around that whole concept.
Oh yes, I mean, that's a very important facet of government purchasing, is to make sure that, you know, not only do we get our needs met, you know, but we are fair to the vendor community in general, so that, you know, the notification is fair. Everyone has an opportunity to come in. If you're a qualified vendor and have a product that meets our specifications to meet our need, that you have an opportunity to come in. You know, I mean, if we have 10 bidders, you know, well, it can only be one winner, but everyone had the same opportunity in the same specification, and we do our best to try to meet that and make sure everyone is aware of it.
A level playing field for sure.
Level playing field, exactly.
You know, one of the things that I had an experience with you recently where we sat at the table and one of the directors had a bid proposal that was being developed. It was really illuminating for me to sit there with you and this director and to go through what we were listing as the specifications we were looking for, all of the different parameters and how detailed it needed to be in order to get what we were needing. This had to do with the housekeeping services at the healthcare center. Wow, I got to see you in action in a way that I hadn't ever seen you in action, to advise that director, to provide us with some other best practices in putting the specs together and making sure that it covered all the bases that it needed to cover, that while David, in this case, David Rademacher, had the content aspect covered, you had the other technical aspects covered, and you could advise on how else could we get at some other information that was going to be invaluable to us in making the best decision for Portage County. So again, I mean, I watched you do that. I was part of that, and you are really like part of everybody's team in county government. Whether you're working with the highway commissioner, whether you're over helping with AODA services through our health and human services, whether you're helping us buy toilet paper out of the facilities department, it's all of those things together, and that's truly something. How do you know so much about all of these different topics, from buying an ambulance to buying office paper?
Well, in purchasing, we always say we know a little bit about a whole lot of stuff, you know, and we have to rely on very technical data from the experts, you know, like the highway department, you know. I know a little bit, you know, but as far as what materials are required, you know, we have huge expertise in those areas within those departments. But just being kind of the coordinator and kind of the traffic police is saying, well, I need this information from this expert, I need this information from this expert, and be able to consolidate that down into something that makes sense that a bidder can come in and bid on. That's typically the challenge and the skill of the purchasing department. Yeah, you know, we can talk about a lot of subjects, and generally just because we've been around it and experienced it, have some knowledge, but once you get in there deep, that's when we have to go back and rely on, and that's where our skills are, is to know, I may not know the answer to that, but I know who I can call to get the answer to that, typically. And then sometimes we have to do some research and then contact even other government agencies out there, and there's institutes out there where we can contact other agencies in other states through the National Institute of Government Purchasing. So, you know, as unique as we think our purchases are, somewhere out there in the world, someone has bought this before. And
that's kind of
we
a neat
can
way to think
exactly,
about it.
and then we can rely on, you know, learning from their experience to say, well, okay, well, you've bought this unique service that was unique to us. We've never done it, you know, but how did you go about procuring it? You know, we can ask, you know, well, what trouble did you have? Because that's what we want to know. We don't want to have the same troubles as far as, you know, the experiences that they had. Learn from their mistakes, have a better document, and have a really good contract. Because that's what it's all about, is having a good contract. Because you want your vendor to be able to survive. They need to be there for us to provide that service, so they need to be adequately compensated, and then at a point where it's still a good deal for us, so it's a win-win on both sides.
Talk about how, like when you go to the committee and you bring us, it's usually a table, and they'll say, these were all the responses to that request for proposals or whatever it was, the bids, and then here are the prices and so on and so forth, and you will lay out the particulars, and then you are the one there to answer the questions on those, not the director of that unit. You're like that watchdog, making sure that nobody is just choosing a favorite out there.
Correct.
It's about the balance in the whole process and helping everybody be better decision makers along the way. But how do you, like, talk about responsiveness, and how do you evaluate what's a responsive bid and what's not, and so on?
Well, the two keys is responsive and responsible. So typically with our bid documents, we ask for certain information. So if you don't provide that information, you're not responsive. So if I asked you to provide me an equipment list of your company or what capabilities you have or whatever, they may not be responsive if they didn't give you enough data to make a good decision. So then if they're not responsive, their bid can be thrown out. You know, sometimes we can go collect that data after the fact, but most of the time we asked you for this information, you didn't provide it, or they provide it in some format that's not useful to us. And then responsible is, are you capable of doing this particular work.
That's
and
where we have
meeting
the
the
evaluations.
specifications. That's where you have your
You
evaluations.
know, that come in from, like, they have to put what references.
You have
like,
references that you can check.
sometimes and so on.
Sometimes you will visit a facility that, if it's a, you know, a lot of times for engineering services. Well, we don't know, well, you know, if we're building a bridge, we don't know how to build a bridge, the engineering side of it, otherwise we'd have built it ourselves, you know. So we need to hire these individuals to come in and provide that specification data as far as the drawings and the steel. Well, we want to say, well, what other bridges have you done? And I want to see one 10 years old and see what it looks like, you know. And those types of things that we can say, well, you know, what is their expertise? Are they a responsible bidder? Do they meet our requirements and our specifications? And that's important to the other vendors too, because if I say, here's our minimum specifications, and we award to the lowest bid and he doesn't meet them, that's not fair to all the other vendors that did bid and meet the specifications. So it's important to do a good review, and if they have not met the minimum requirements, to make sure that we don't award to that particular vendor. And it takes a little bit of research, and up front, like I said, it all starts with identifying that need, having your specifications up front, make sure that, you know, they are detailed enough that we can do that analysis after. It's hard to do that analysis when you don't have the upfront data.
There was one other thing I wanted to touch on, and that is sometimes there had been the perception of people writing specs too tight in a certain department or two departments or something like that in the county. That is, they're writing them so that it's only fulfilled by one vendor. Talk a little around that, and how do you make sure that they're not too tight?
Well, we have to justify needs, especially if we do brand-specific specifications. Now, we try not to do that. We try to write a specification to where it does not favor a particular brand, if it's a Ford or a Chevy or what, you know. We sometimes, in order to shorten our specs, we will say this or equal. You know, and then that way you can say, well, I need this product, like if I'm going to do a Bic pen, well, it's a Bic whatever or equal. And then that way I don't have to get down to all the layers of the specifications. I just incorporate that kind of by the reference of the vehicle or the pen or the product or whatever. Now, a lot of times you'll say this, you'll list 2 or 3 different ones that are you know, equivalent to what you're looking for. And that helps the vendor to say, you know, okay, are you looking for a standard 1-ton pickup truck, or are you looking for a dump truck? Are you looking, that way you can have some of that in there to say, no, I want a half-ton vehicle, you know, this or equal, and then that way they can say, yeah, my product is comparable to that, because generally in the industry, they'll know who their competitors are and, you know, what products are equal to what.
Fair enough. Now, before we get to the a little bit about the audit, I want to remind everybody there's a whole nother aspect of procurement, and that's getting rid of stuff.
Correct.
We can't forget that once you get it, you got to figure out how to get rid of it, and you can often make some money in doing it the right way, the better way.
Correct.
So you've done a lot of work on that too, and you've helped us actually get far more for some of the old equipment, say out of our highway department, or equipment that we needed to just get rid of because we weren't using it enough. And I got to applaud you on that. Maybe just a couple of words around that. How do you get rid of stuff around
Well,
here?
we're using some online resources for some of our larger equipment. And then, like I said, again, that casts the wider net, so you have more buyers. Typically, you get a better price.
Like online auctions?
Like online auctions, correct. We use Wisconsin Surplus.
Okay.
And that's just an online. A lot of municipalities use it. They're really popular in Wisconsin, all the way from the state agencies down to a lot of counties. So they have a huge buyer base there. And then we do some advertising locally as well in the newspaper, so that, you know, if it's something, you know, Parks Department just had a big sale out there, and, you know, we sold, or going to sell a truck, probably sold about now, that got actually more than what we thought we were going to get for it. You know, it was an older vehicle.
And then the surplus, like for office equipment, where we use the surplus on campus?
Correct.
Right?
And we did partner, and that was actually in place even as I was coming in. You guys were working on that. And you guys worked really hard on that. And it is a huge benefit to us, because they already have this in place, so we don't have to create all this infrastructure just for our organization. We can partner with them. They already have a store. If it doesn't sell there, they have a whole state system to back this up. And it's just using resources smart. We don't have to build that again. It's already in place. Use what's out there, and it's already efficient because they've done it for years, and it's a fabulous thing for us. Helped us clean out our basement, and we got actually stuff that we probably would have thrown away. We actually received some compensation for like older chairs and things of that nature.
So here it is. This is the recent internal audit from Baker Tilly that was done. It's an operational audit of our procurement function in Portage County. a really phenomenal document, and we've got about 5 minutes or so to talk through a little bit about what were some of the findings. We had this timed pretty much with your arrival in the county so that this would then create the work plan after your initial observations and improvements, that this would be the next level of drilling down to make a really good operational plan for our purchasing department in Portage County. Why don't you talk about some of the findings and where are we going with this?
Sure, it was actually a very good audit. I mean, they had basically roughly 28 recommendations. You know, some of them a high priority recommendation, some of them like a mid-level recommendation. 13 of the 28 were related to technology. We are looking at doing a needs assessment to saying, well, you know, here's what we're using now. The technology we're using now is an AS400. It's an older system. It's homegrown. I'm taking a guess, but it was probably developed in the late 80s and 90s. And it's a testament to how good our IT programmers are that we're still using it. I mean, we really got our money's worth out of the AS400, you know. Looking forward, technology has changed so much. I think it's even a struggle for IT to keep up with trying to squeeze more process out of that old technology. Moving forward with that, we'll have better data, can make better decisions. It'll cost some money up front, but it will, in the back end, pay for itself, and a huge benefit to like our decision making and streamlining.
Yep.
The systems, like I said, the older systems, you know, you have to touch a transaction so many times to get it from where you've identified the need all the way through the system. These new systems are more streamlined. They use electronic notifications. Integrated, exactly.
Yep,
So,
there's
I mean,
risk management tools in them. I mean, there's all of these pieces that once we can come around the other side of the ball and improve our technology and lift us into this next world, right? It'll also support us in a whole bunch of other areas. It'll be tied to our financial systems in the county. It'll be tied to our HR systems in the county. They'll all be integrated, all of these different pieces together. And I think there is a real, that's the most significant finding here. What do you call it, an
ERP, and I believe that's Enterprise Resource and Planning is what they call the system. Because it's more than just purchasing. I mean, it's financial. Like I said, you know, you can incorporate HR, you can incorporate assets, all those things that can group together. Right now with our system, we have this stuff segmented, so we kind of have to pull it out and then massage it in some other like Excel program or whatever. And there's a lot of manual process with that. And that's what, redundancy of efforts. And that's what we're trying to get at, to say, well, this, if you go with these newer systems, they've been developed over the last, you know, from our 20-year-old system to the new systems, the efficiencies are so much better. They've been tested and are built from the start on best practices from not only purchasing organizations, but financial, you know, best practices, and they will be a huge efficiency boost for the county top to bottom.
Now, I know that we're assembling the work team right now to assist in the first stages of implementing the recommendations of this plan. And that is to be looking especially at our purchasing ordinance and how we may need to make some recommendations to the county board about ordinance changes that can make it a more practical system and can allow us to fit better with new technology that we're going to be investing in as we go forward. So that's kind of exciting. Now, I know we only have a few minutes left in the show, and what I'd like to do is just give you a chance to touch on anything else that you think you would like to let our listeners know about. We've got about a minute to go.
Sure. With the vendor community that may be out there watching, I would highly suggest that you sign up for the State Bureau of Procurement VendorNet system.
Okay.
It's vendornet. Let me get the address here.
We'll
It's
put it on the bottom of the screen.
Put it on the bottom of the screen. vendornet.state.wi.us.
Okay.
We are using that to broadcast our notices for bids.
Great.
We are not the only entity on there. State agencies are mandatory to use that. So you not only do you get our bids, but you'll get DNR, DOT, all those other bids.
Chance to build business.
And exactly, and it's free for the vendors to register, and it does an electronic notification. So the day I put it out there, you know.
Excellent.
So.
Now that's terrific. Now I'm going to tell you straight up here, I really think you are doing a phenomenal job for Portage County. I mean that so sincerely.
Well,
I so appreciate it, so kudos to you and your staff. Next month we're going to have Tim Siebert here. He's with our Portage County Historical Society. We're going to learn more about what's happening in that front. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.